Hey everyone, this is BR, and today I want to talk about the decline of Apex and discuss the reasons for this decline. I actually don't agree with many reasons that are usually given by people to explain it, and I want to offer my own perspective on things. In fact, the big motivator for this video is that while I do love Apex and have fun playing it, I can't seem to find myself actually getting on and playing the game regularly. Maybe I'd hop on one day, but find it really difficult to get on the next day, and then weeks would go by without me ever thinking about it. And that got me wondering, because I noticed this pattern happening over and over again throughout the past year. While others might not be in the exact same boat with me, I sense that a similar feeling is prevalent with many players, especially those who talk about Apex's decline on YouTube. They love Apex and aren't playing it as much, and it gets attributed to multiple factors, and that's what I want to talk about. While I get where the frustration is coming from, I don't agree that the reasons they point out are the actual cause for the decline, because I personally have heard these points being told time and time again throughout Apex's lifespan, and I want to give an alternative theory that takes into consideration circumstances that I haven't heard others talk about, but it's going to take some context and explanation to do so. So if you're here for that conversation, make yourself comfortable. This might take a while. That is why I hope you listen to this entire video and take into consideration everything I say, because it's something I'm passionate about, and I would really like for you to tell me what you think down in the comment section below in order to keep the discussion going. And while you're down there, I would appreciate it if you left a like, as well as that helps the video a lot. You don't have to subscribe, but if you like video essays and listening to me trying to give original takes on stuff, I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, let's get on with the video. I can't believe it's already been 5 years. It's unbelievable to think that this game came out so long ago, as well as the perception of Apex's state being the lowest it's ever been relative to where it once was. From a titan in the battle royale genre that had more refined gameplay than Fortnite, to the past its prime game that siphons money from its customers. From a title that stole players from Warzone for its existing anti-cheat to one that delivers less and less with each update. It's saddening because Apex was a game I used to play religiously and invested time and money into because I believed that it delivered a great product. Sure, things weren't always good, content was slower and cosmetics pricey, but it was still great to play solo and with friends. And honestly, getting back on the game has shown me that it hasn't fundamentally changed at all. It's still the same great game that I played years ago, albeit with some consequential gameplay changes here and there, and of course, new legends. For better or for worse, it's the same game. So why is it that we are seeing the game decline so heavily? The three most popular points that I hear on YouTube seems to point towards greed, content drought, and burnout. Personally, these reasons have been repeated for so long that they just aren't satisfying answers to me. They've lost their luster. Thus, I'm going to discuss each of them and why they aren't effective causes. Then afterwards, I want to offer my own theory and ways Apex could remedy. This year, Apex got hit with one of the biggest controversies of its history with the change of the Battle Pass system, where, to put a long story short, EA wanted everyone to purchase the Battle Pass twice for the same amount of content, and they hoped that it would make twice the return. Now, I am oversimplifying a lot of the specifics here, but for this video, the details are not really worth getting into. It's just needed to be known that EA was doing EA things and it fucked with Apex's reputation hard. That being said, I disagree that this is the reason why Apex has been declining. If corporate greed determined a game's failure alone, people would stop playing League, and considering that the world has yet to solve world hunger, war, and disease, it just shows me that League is very much still alive and well. The other culprit blamed for Apex's decline is content drought. For the past 2 years, it's really felt that the game is slowly losing all the resources it once had, and given that there have been a lot of crap going on behind the scenes, that is most likely true. Again, the specifics are not important because this reason is also not one that I believe that has led to Apex's slow death. Team Fortress 2 and Overwatch have shown that heavy content droughts can't take down a game alone either. In fact, I would argue that Apex has done a lot in terms of content with new heroes, modes, mechanics, and maps. While I do believe that fundamentally, Apex has not changed since its inception, in regards to specifics, the game has evolved to a much better and more interesting game, and there has been plenty to be appreciative of. This sentiment would be reinforced to me after playing Apex's OG mode and noticing just how poorly the early seasons have changed. I had 3 matches that by the time we were top 3, we were barely finishing up round 1. I personally don't think Apex has had too much trouble with content, and I would argue that they are decent with it most of the time. Something I think we forget is that we always see player peaks when any new gameplay content pops up, which is good because it means that Apex can entice players pretty well, but almost immediately after, the player count normalizes. Apex has no trouble bringing people back. The problem is that it has trouble keeping people in, and that there is the hint that will lead us to the real reason why I think Apex is dying, but there's still one more point to cover. Finally, burnout is actually the best reason I used to believe in, because it makes sense logically and with just what kind of game Apex is. With what is asked from the player, with all the mechanics you have to learn and the mechanical skill required to be effective, it's a good argument to say that players are just tired with the game, regardless of just how good it is. Too much of a good thing can be bad. However, this is only true in the short term and with a small population of players. Burnout is a temporary condition. Eventually, someone who is burnt out will recover and start playing again, especially if they like the game very much. Also, that doesn't mean that the player can't play casually in the meantime. Maybe not alone, but even a burnout player won't be discouraged from having a gaming sesh with the boys. Not only that, but the actual player population of hardcore players who are most susceptible to burnout are substantially smaller relative to the casual base, or those who just play to have a good time. So my main takeaway here is that greed, content, and burnout can't be the root cause of the issue. I can support that they are symptoms or even contributing to Apex's decline, but they are not the big bad, so our search continues. The thing is, these phenomena aren't anything new, as it has been happening since Apex's inception. If you were to point at any time in Apex's timeline, you'd either land on a span of time where it's a "we are so back" moment or an "it's so over" part of the timeline. For example, Apex's launch, "we are so in." Underwhelming post-launch support, "it's so over, bros." World's Edge, crypto, and the pandemic, "we are so back." Rampart, "it's so over." Steam launch, "we are so back and better than ever." And Apex would continue riding this high for a long time. And then around Newcastle and Vantage, things would steadily decline. Now, a naive outlook would be that these are the seasons that were just so disappointing that Apex started falling off around this point. Problem with that theory, though, is that seasons are worked on months in advance, so decisions on what to include in seasons are made based on data collected long before they are released. Looking at the dates, that being mid to late 2022, then a correlation reveals itself, because this time frame is a little while after the world opened back up after the lockdowns. So let's rewind a bit to see how this part factors into Apex's history. The lockdowns, while a terrible time for the economy as a whole, were actually an amazing time for tech, especially video games. While the quality of games at the time were questionable, profits were reported by game companies to be the highest they had ever been, which makes sense. People were using a lot of their spare time consuming media, video games being one of them. If you were a gamer around this time, then there is a non-zero chance that you spent an entire day gaming and nothing else. What this also meant was that there was plenty of investment in new games, leading to a shitload of capital being pumped into the industry and people getting hired for new projects in order for game companies to make more profit. However, early to mid-2022 was when life started to get a semblance of normalcy. People went back to work, going to school, going to places, and restrictions were being lifted left and right. allowing most people to spend time doing something else other than play video games. A consequence of this was that the gaming industry, as well as other tech industries, saw a sharp decline in revenue and a meteoric rise in inflation, which led us to the situation we are now with mass layoffs in order to keep as much profit as possible. The growth in the industry shown during the pandemic was a bubble, and when people stopped spending as much on microtransactions and game purchases, the bubble popped, which has led to the mass layoffs and slashing of budgets as companies tried to recoup anything they could. But what does this have to do with Apex? Well, I believe that Apex rode this bubble to reach the peak of the game that was witnessed years ago. All the money spent developing new maps, skins, characters, and systems were all investments made long ago, because content is developed in advance in order to capitalize on the dramatic growth of the game's industry. With the bubble deflating, Apex naturally suffered alongside it. Content drought and greedy microtransactions were not the reason for this decline, nor were they the result of the decline directly, but rather a side effect of the industry's decline as a whole. I will admit though, they definitely did not help. Even if a game is popular, if the EA economists don't believe that they're going to get the same return as before, they're not going to invest. And I would argue they haven't seen a large projected return at the scale of the lockdowns in a long time, and they probably never will. And with the game's player population dwindling, they will continue to not invest as much into the game as before. Ultimately, I feel that if this trend does not change, Apex will be shut down or restructured in about 2 years. The brand will probably stick around somehow, but we all know just how fond EA is of killing studios after milking it dry. But all that considered, we are still left with a burning question. Why is the player population decreasing? This is where we have to change our perspective and reconsider what is truly important for a game to keep relevancy. It's not the content and it's not the monetization. It most definitely is player count. Don't get me wrong, making money is important, but without players, where's the money? Because logic goes, if there are more players, there are potentially more customers, and more customers means more funding. This is EA after all. If the number line goes up, we possibly get more if they believe that it will continue to go up. Positive reinforcement does exist here. It really doesn't matter how expensive things get in a game. If the game has the clout of being popular, some people will spend money on it. It has a limit, but I'm sure that EA is well aware of how to maximize spending from their customers. So where are all the players then? Let's answer that question with another question. And this goes for those who have played Apex and love Apex, but just don't play it right now. Why don't you play it? You find the game fun, you know what to expect out of the game, and you have pooled many hours into the game. In fact, you even want to play it right now, but you still can't. This is where I am in terms of my relationship with Apex, and I think that Apex is truly the only game that makes me wonder about this and no other. You might think Overwatch is straight dookie, but if a friend were to ask you to play a match or two, what outside of the game stops you from playing it? There is virtually no effort required if you have the game installed, so you might likely, though begrudgingly, hop on to play a match of Overwatch, or TF2, but Apex, there's a struggle there, and there's data to support it. Of course, that being the dwindling player count. And that is where my argument finally comes for this video, and that is that Apex Legends is fundamentally flawed as a game to the point that it makes itself unappealing for average players to continuously play the game, and the main reason behind it is the time commitment required to enjoy the game. Having a solid match of Apex is a gamble and inconsistent in the long run, thus it only makes itself approachable by the most hardcore of players who can afford to spend the time necessary to have a good time playing Apex, which makes Apex pretty difficult to enjoy casually. This wasn't so bad during the lockdowns because everyone had more than enough time to spare, but now that we don't, Apex is no longer worth playing because unlike the competition, there is no guarantee that our time with the game will be good. In fact, I would argue that this has been the case ever since the beginning back in 2019. It's just that the lockdowns gave Apex the opportunity it otherwise wouldn't have. Thus, the steady decline is just the player base count normalizing. Let me explain. When I say time commitment, I'm not talking about the skill ceiling, nor am I talking about how sweaty Apex has become and has always been. I don't believe that the competitiveness of a game is the driving force behind any game's decline, as that is more a matter of taste, and many people like Apex and its competitive gameplay. Rather, the focus instead should be on the other side of the spectrum. I would argue that Apex's inability to be played as a casual game is what is truly hurting the game. This is where we have to come to the consensus on redefining the phrase casual game, because when I say this, I don't mean Apex has to become a piss-easy shooter with dumbed-down mechanics to be better. Rather, my definition of casual game is one that can be played in such a way that you don't have to invest a lot of time in order to have a good time with it. The problem with Apex on that front is that the game is inconsistent in delivering an enjoyable time where, while there is potential for a match to be the most fun match you'll ever play in your life, there's also the chance that you'll play one of the most boring and miserable experiences in gaming. In fact, the two most common and unsatisfying matches that can happen are the complete demolition of your squad match and the absolutely nothing happens match. Sometimes, you can even get both. You can legitimately queue up for a match, wait 5 minutes to land, and either be sent immediately back to the lobby, wasting your time on bad luck, or spend an entire match not finding anyone to fight until eventually you fight one team, which means you spend nearly 40 minutes doing absolute jack shit besides running around the map and gathering loot. And who knows, you could end up winning a match and not even fight anyone. I'm not kidding, I have footage to prove it. There is footage of me and my friends playing an entire match of Apex and winning while never fighting anyone. Is it fun to win a match by doing absolutely nothing? It's amusing, sure, but would I consider that time well spent? No! I want to fight. I want to use the loot that I find. I want to use my abilities. I want to experience the shit that Apex is known for, and the sole reason I'm playing Apex. I don't care about winning if winning is boring as shit. Compare that to Overwatch, where the worst case scenarios are someone abandoning a match or a complete steamroll. Both scenarios are god-awful, but they are, importantly, also short, which means a quicker time being able to search for another match. Well then, what about a long match that goes on to overtime that you still lose? That just means you were playing Overwatch, which can be debated if it's good or not, but the fact of the matter is that you are more than likely, at the bare minimum, able to play the video game you showed up to play. Most games can be played as intended almost immediately after pressing play. Not Apex, where the two most egregious scenarios that are possible actually have you not play Apex at all and at the cost of wasting your time. It's actually a little impressive if you ask me, because it's like a gamble every time you queue up. Are you hearing what I'm saying? You can literally queue up for a match and there is a chance you don't play Apex. They fucking added loot box mechanics to the fucking matchmaking. This is what I mean when I say that you can't play Apex casually, because you either get lucky and have a decent time with it, or the game drags out with nothing fun happening, or you get into one fight and get sent back to the lobby, wasting your time. The gamble requires you to play more than one match, because then you have a higher chance of finally being able to play a great match of Apex. Or you can choose the alternative, which is just playing another video game and allocating your time somewhere else. Apex is just not worth gambling our time with the hopes of having an enjoyable match. This is what I believe happened to a majority of Apex players that have long since left Apex, subconsciously realizing that the game is not worth their time, especially when they can play other games that deliver a consistent experience. I think that the feeling of getting off of work, consider playing some Apex, and thinking, do I really want to spend my afternoon playing Apex, and instead go play something else, is a common feeling. To a lesser extent, the Battle Pass system, which is meant to incentivize playtime, also falls into a similar trap of being a huge time waster to the point of being unappealing. I used to think that the challenges were actually more ethical compared to other battle passes because it involved actual gameplay challenges like playing matches and getting damage. However, as time went on and I looked at the battle passes with greater scrutiny, I realized, goddamn, these challenges are such time sinks. Play 10 games is pretty tedious on its own, but it gets worse when you look at the other challenges alongside it. If you plan to do the win and damage challenges, then congratulations, you just extended the time it would take for you to complete the win 10 games challenges. What if you're not Apex's grindiest boy? That's just more time you have to dedicate in order to complete the battle pass, and this problem is exacerbated when you realize that these challenges reward the most and are the ones that are found in every week of the battle pass. On paper, these challenges are not time friendly at all. You also aren't going to be able to complete these challenges in parallel, which means there is a hard minimum to how quickly you can finish the battle pass, including if you are good at the game. Which is the point, I guess, but for someone who has dropped the game, are these challenges easy enough to entice a player to return to Apex? No. They're going to think it's just tedious nonsense. Well, wait just a moment, Mr. Video Essay. If that's the case with Apex Legends, why did it succeed at all? It sounds like it should have died years ago. You're actually onto something there. That is why I put such importance on the lockdowns, because with the lockdowns came one of the most valuable resources to Apex benefit. That being time. With everyone locked indoors with nothing to do, playing Apex for hours on end didn't seem so unappealing. Without time as a limiting factor, more people were willing to spend it playing Apex. And of course, once the lockdowns were over, Apex returned to being less appealing to the alternative options, resulting in the decline that we see now. In fact, I would argue that this has been Apex's problem since its inception back in 2019. Like I said, and with what my friends who played since launch corroborate, Apex has always been in a state of decline. Once the hype and the excitement for content ends, it goes back to, it's so over, with player numbers dwindling. This is unlike other games that see consistent or even growing player numbers. What is interesting is just how fast Apex's decline was compared to how slow it took for it to grow its player base. Though this point I'm not as confident with, as it could be attributed to other factors. Even back when Apex was on top of the world, player retention was still a big concern, but it was much easier to chalk that up to content and greed. Then it was only a matter of time that Apex found itself in this predicament where it's just bleeding players, and maybe that was its destiny. Let me pose this question. Had the pandemic not happened, would Apex have been able to reach the heights it would have? Would Apex have received the amount of investment from EA as they did? I say no. And considering the fact that Apex's gameplay has only gotten better with updates and time, that is a confident no. We probably would have gotten another Titanfall had Apex just been a moderate success, but with an explosive start, telling EA the brand works, it just needs another attempt. That's my speculation, but I'm pretty confident about it. So this begs the question, is Apex non-salvageable? Is it Jover, bros? No. There's always something that can be done, but the problem is that it requires a fundamental change to the established Apex formula. And unfortunately, I don't have a confident answer in my body. There's a saying out there about customers being good at finding problems, just not good at solving them. I'm no game designer, I just play one on TV. But I think there is a glimmer of hope already here. Originally, I was going to talk about a Fortnite mode that satisfies on delivering a consistent gameplay experience but still keeping the Battle Royale mode. To my surprise, when I went to go record footage for my video on Apex, I found that Apex already had it in the game. Trios Revival is a pretty good variation of the Battle Royale formula that I think would help Apex become a more consistent game. It's not perfect, but the simple act of being revived and getting back into the action in a moment's notice is actually very engaging. Not having a fear going into fights makes me take riskier plays I wouldn't have and actually incentivizes agency in those earlier rounds. It still sucks when your entire squad gets wiped, but it's still a good time. I can actually say that you can play this mode casually and just have a good time all around. There are still two problems with it, first being that the revive mechanic is a little janky. Being revived directly on top of your teammate kinda sucks, as well as balancing issues. Second, a mode tucked away as an LTM is not going to bring people back, but the fact that even weeks after the season launch, it is relatively easy to find a match of revival is telling of something. I can confidently say that if some form of revival were to be implemented into base Apex, where you are guaranteed at least 15 minutes of fun Apex action, the game could probably stop bleeding players as it removes the two worst conditions: a quick match where you never play the game, or a match that goes on for too long where you never play the game. Which, quick tangent, Arenas was kind of that. It had its issues and it still took a while to complete a single match, but at the very least you could actually play the game right from the start. However, reintroducing Arenas isn't going to cut it. People play Apex for the Battle Royale, not TDM, not Control, and not Arenas. So a change has to be done with the Battle Royale. Now, I know what you Apex diehards are going to argue. This changes Apex too much. It will just make Apex into a baby game. Casuals just gotta ruin it for everyone. This is my rebuttal.
So fucking what?
It is apparent to me that with the way things are going right now, Apex is going to continue to go down in players. Maybe it will normalize, but even if it does, EA does not care if there is a small, dedicated community. If they aren't getting their cut, servers will be shut down. That's just business, and EA doesn't like to be played. Besides, I'm not saying Apex should be turned into Fortnite. It doesn't need to. We know that people like the game. You don't lose 50% of your player base without having them there in the first place. It's just that players aren't playing, and changing the game in order to make it more approachable in the day-to-day, giving it that viability as a casual game, is a good thing. A solid casual player base is the foundation of any game, from fighters to racers to shooters. By not having a strong casual foundation, Apex is shooting itself in the foot because the most money is found at the bottom. Pros get paid, and casuals foot the bill. And without the casuals, there is nothing. Something has to be done, and the answer is not more content or more affordable cosmetics. If we see growth in Apex, EA will respond with more funding, which means more content. Otherwise, we might have to say goodbye to a game we love so much. This has been BR. I love Apex, and I would hate to see it go.